Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt live inside the Beltway on this election day in Pennsylvania, Tuesday, May 17th. Polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. today in Pennsylvania. I'm heard all over the state, from Scranton and all the way up in the northeastern corner down to Philadelphia, all the way over to Pittsburgh and up to Erie. And I encourage everyone to go and vote for David McCormick for the United States Senate. I also think Lou Barletta is a much easier to elect candidate. I don't think Mr. Mastriano can win. I know David McCormick can win. I don't think any of the other people can win. If you're going to vote for Kathy Barnett or Dr. Oz, I think you were throwing your vote away because they can't beat John Fetterman. And this election matters so much because if McCormick doesn't get the nomination, we're going to have a very hard time getting the Senate back in Republican hands. And then confirmation of Supreme Court justices will remain in Chuck Schumer's hands. The opportunity to break the filibuster will remain in Chuck Schumer's hands. It's vitally important to elect David McCormick. The Bronze Star recipient, graduate of West Point, grew up outside of Pittsburgh. He built business in Pittsburgh. He built jobs in Pittsburgh. He's a Pittsburgher. And so this goes against my grain to say nice things about a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. I mean, Steelers forever with McCormick. But Dave McCormick's a great American. And when you're a West Point graduate and you receive the Bronze Star for Valor in the 82nd Airborne in the First Gulf War, you can trust the character. You can, President Trump almost made him defense secretary at one point, asked him to be the deputy secretary of energy, and Dave McCormick's not a deputy anything, but he would be a great, great United States senator. So please get out and vote. I'll remind you throughout it. Let me do the rundown. Kim Jong-un in North Korea has mobilized the military, as more than 50,000 people have died quickly since they announced that. And this is all government numbers, so multiply them by 10. North Korea says 50,000 North Koreans have died. Hundreds of thousands more is affected by one or more variants of coronavirus. They have no testing, they have no medicine, they have nothing. And the ability of North Korea to deal with the pandemic depended solely on a totalitarian regime being able to keep out anyone from coming in. It didn't work. It eventually got there. A pandemic's got a pandemic. North Korea will be in chaos. That's dangerous for the world. Russian failures are fueled by Vladimir Putin's meddling, according to the Times of London. President Putin is making low-level tactical decisions that would normally be decided by an officer in charge of as few as 700 troops. A military source said that Putin and General Valery Gerasimov, chief of the general staff, were dictating basic movements of their forces in Ukraine. Quote, "We think Putin and Gerasimov are involved in tactical decision-making at a level we would normally expect to be taken by a colonel or a brigadier." A second military source said in the Russian military, a colonel or brigadier would normally command the equivalent of 2 battalion tactical groups, PTGs, each comprising about 900 personnel. Quote, "Putin is doing the job of a brigade commander. He would be delving into a force that could be as small as 7 to 100,000 soldiers." That's what LBJ did during the Vietnam War. Disastrous when a political actor gets involved in professional military operations at that level. Disastrous. You make a decision to go war, no war. You make a decision, we will go into World War II on behalf of Great Britain, or we will sell them Lend-Lease. But you didn't see Churchill telling his chief of staff down to the Montgomery level and lower when to fight the Battle of El Alamein. You didn't see FDR and Churchill telling Eisenhower when to launch D-Day. It doesn't work. Meanwhile, the Telegraph confirms what I reported on the show yesterday. Russian troops have reached the border. Ukrainian troops have retaken all of the Kharkiv region, have reached the Russian border, are poised to cut off Russian supply lines. The Bank of England has warned of, quote, apocalyptic global food shortage. This will, of course, not affect the United States unless Joe Biden has anything to do with it, in which case we'll probably end up like we are with baby formula. Russian military fired S-300 missiles at Israeli jets over Syria. That's an alarming escalation of the signals in the world. Now, on the good side, Putin signaled acceptance of Finland and Sweden joining NATO. But he attempted to set a line, no bases there, no nukes there. That's not up to Vladimir Putin. It isn't. German defense minister is confident that Turkey, I discussed this with Admiral Stavridis yesterday, will come around to Sweden and Norway joining NATO. Details on the California church shooting Sunday have now come up. Turns out it's a Chi-Com sympathizer. That's right. A fan of the Chinese Communist Party went and shot up the Geneva Presbyterian Church in Laguna Woods. He also brought explosives. It could have been far worse than the 1 dead and 5 wounded. Dr. John Chang, a physician, is a hero. He ran at him. It took a bullet. Dr. Chang died, but sufficiently disturbed the killer that the other parishioners, including the pastor, were able to hit him with chairs, knock him down, tie him up, take his 2 guns, and not allow him to set off the explosives. Long story in the New York Times on how guns are taken away under New York's red flag law. Since New York's so-called red flag law took effect in 2019, judges have ordered 589 orders barring people from possessing firearms. About 18 orders to take guns away from people are issued per month under the law, which allows relatives and law enforcement or school officials to request what is normally known as extreme risk protection order. In Arizona, they're called severe risk protection, severe threat of order of protection, stop orders. You've got to file a process, an application with the state court system at the county level that the individual is likely to engage in conduct that would result in serious harm to self or others. There are 19 of these laws across the United States. They do not know why it did not work against the New York killer in Buffalo, as he had been previously committed. We don't need new laws. We need to enforce the laws that are there. I do not know how a young man who threatens to shoot up his school gets committed and is obviously unbalanced and doesn't get a red flag prohibiting him from buying the rifles that he did. In New York State, the partisan map drawn up by Democrats was thrown up into the air, an upheaval that's extraordinary. It is, according to Dave Wasserman, a huge swing against Democrats from the plan that was struck down. Democrats could lose a lot of ground this fall in New York, and that could drive us straight through their hopes of keeping the House majority. Meanwhile, in Florida, the map put forward by Ron DeSantis was struck down by a Florida judge. So both the R's and the D's took it on the chin yesterday, but the R's took a lot. The R's are knocked out in Florida. They're just reeling. That map by the special master may be adjusted a little bit, but it went from almost destroying the Republicans completely to there being probably 9 Republicans and 9 swing districts, or 5 and 9, 5 certain Republican districts, up 1 from the current map, and 9 swing districts in this environment where Joe Biden is unpopular and getting less popular by the moment. It's very good news. Supreme Court sided with Senator Ted Cruz, striking down a campaign finance regulation. The 6-3 majority, the opinion was written by Chief Justice Roberts, and the 5 other conservatives joined with the chief to strike down another impediment to free speech. This is a free speech court. This is a freedom of exercise court for those who believe in religious freedom. I think this is a court that's going to strike down Roe and Dobbs shortly, and I think it's going to be 6-3. The dissents are predictable. Breyer, Kagan, Sotomayor, and when Justice Jackson Brown replaces Breyer, that 6-3 lineup is going to be around a lot. Here's a story that I'm going to talk a lot about this morning. Abbott agrees to FDA oversight of Michigan baby formula plant. Look, they signed a consent decree yesterday to reopen the Michigan Abbott plant. That consent decree could have been signed a month ago. Abbott has strenuously protested from the beginning that their infant formula had nothing to do with the infant deaths being investigated across the country. The FDA was moving at its usual snail's pace, its bureaucratic morass, plunging the country into a baby formula crisis that is real. So they got an order. It's pretty easy to surmise here what happened. Ron Klain or someone from the president's office called over to the FDA and said, open that plant. And the FDA said, how do we save a little face here? I know, we'll do a consent decree that says they can open the plant. And so their plant will be open. It's going to take a while. Jeff Bezos has turned up the heat on Joe Biden. And Elon Musk today said that it appears that 20% of the accounts on Twitter are fake, that the CEO of Twitter will not comment on this, and that the deal's not going forward until he gets some certainty. Expect Twitter stock to crash today. But if they come clean on what Twitter is and how valuable it is, he'll still buy it, but they got to come clean on how much of it's just fake. And there's a lot of it that's fake. You just can't trust corporate America anymore. It's gone woke, it's gone blue, it's gone corrupt. I'll be right back. The center. I've got a column coming out this morning over at the WashingtonPost.com that says Doug Ducey of Arizona might get drafted by business interests in Washington, D.C. To come back here after his term. If he doesn't run for president, to come here and reestablish free enterprise's good reputation inside the Capitol because it's hit bottom. I'll be right. The Chamber of Commerce, the National Federation of Independent, they've all just run off the road. We'll see. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Welcome back, America. Pennsylvania is voting today. Polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Dave McCormick is my choice for the Pennsylvania Senate primary. He's going to join me next hour, make his last pitch to voters to get out there. David Drucker is following that race. Indeed, he's following every race in the United States, as he always does, from the Washington Examiner. David M. Drucker on Twitter. Good morning, David. How are you?
I'm good, Hugh. Hey,
any predictions on Pennsylvania? I think it could be a one-vote race. I know Kathy Burnett peaked and then she's falling. I know Oz has been pretty much there. I think McCormick is winning the independent votes that were undecided, but I don't know how it's going to turn out. What say you?
Yeah, look, I'm not going to be foolish enough to predict this one. It's been a really interesting race over the past few days. I mean, we had Barnett's surge. I've been talking to people for months, and they had warned me that the negative fight between the perceived negative fight between Oz and McCormick, that's how voters were interpreting it there, was leaving room for a third candidate to surge. Some thought it might be Jeff Bartos. It turned out to be Barnett. And now, of course, she's been dealing with all the scrutiny that comes with being in front, and it's not all that comfortable. And it seems like, both McCormick and Oz started paying attention. And McCormick in particular, I noticed, really cut down on the negative advertising and tried to close with a positive pitch. So what happens? Really hard to say, and I'm supposed to have something better to tell you. All I can tell you is I think this was a really interesting case of a contest where Pennsylvania Republicans really didn't like any of the choices they had. And sometimes when that happens, and we've seen this often in other states, they will pick the third non-front runner almost by throwing up their hands and saying, I just can't deal with any of this. And I don't think, finally, that we can dismiss the intervention in this race. Now, he's intervened everywhere, practically, but the intervention in this race of former President Donald Trump, I think he could have shaped this race such that it didn't have to turn out this way, that his endorsement of Oz and Mastriano for governor, for that matter, didn't do anything to calm down the upheaval in the Pennsylvania Republican primary for Senate or governor, and really left a lot of grassroots Republicans unhappy. And it led to a lot of the uncertainty that we're dealing with as voters head to the polls this morning. I will say, because Pennsylvania is not really a big early voting state, you don't have a case where, so many people have already voted. I mean, this is a case where the election could be shaped down to the wire, so we'll see.
Now, David Drucker, I've had Dave McCormick on Thursday, Friday, Monday, and I'm having him on again because I cover the state. I've got like 20 affiliates in Pennsylvania. Making one pitch to them and one pitch only, Dave McCormick can win in the fall against John Fetterman, who has recovered from his stroke, and I'm glad to hear that, but he is a hard left Bernie Sanders candidate, and if the Republicans want the Senate back so that they can stop the worst judges and get oversight going, they have to support Dave McCormick. I just don't think the other two can win in the fall. I believe voters are smart. I especially believe voters of this radio show are smart, and they'll listen to that argument. But I don't know if anyone else is making that argument. Are they?
Well, it's an argument you don't want candidates to make. Candidates need to argue for policy and themselves, leadership, and all sorts of things. What I would say is we know from experience that you are right, that just because a party is having a great midterm year and the atmosphere is great for that party, that it means anybody they throw up is going to win.
Correct.
And we saw in 2010 and 2012 that flawed Senate candidates, flawed Republican Senate candidates can lose in red states. And voters won't just vote for anybody just because, even in our tribal atmosphere. So I think the concerns are valid. And I think that it's an important factor for candidates and parties to consider. The issue is parties are weak and they don't have the ability to shape candidate fields anymore. And on top of that, as in Pennsylvania, and Selena Zita's written a lot about this, they didn't even try. They just kind of sat back and they waited for Mr. Trump, for that matter, to shape things. And in this case, he may not have shaped things for the better, but we will see.
24 years ago, in the Weekly Standard, now owned by the Washington Examiner, I wrote a piece called the Six-Party System and identified three parties within the GOP: the Party of Faith, the Party of Wealth, and the Party of National Security. I've got a column showing up at the Washington Post saying we now have three parties. One is Ultra MAGA, one is MAGA Light, and one is everybody else. How do you divide, if you take my triptych, just assume it for a second, what do you think the National Republican Party percentage-wise divides between Ultra MAGA, MAGA Light, and everybody else?
Great question, and it's not a bad approach. I mean, look, I think Ultra MAGA is probably about 20%, let's say.
That's what I think. Yep.
And I know this is not a third, and a third the way I'm doing this equally, but I think they're about 20%. But they're committed, and they're going to show up, and they're going to be active. And then I think the other two categories will sort of divide up the rest equally. But the MAGA Light can go either way, as can the other one, depending on who the candidate is.
I think that's exactly right. I think Youngkin and Doug Ducey are MAGA Light people, and that Chris Christie and Larry Hogan are everybody else, and maybe Vice President Pence as well. I'll read that column when I come back. David M. Drucker on Twitter. We'll be following you throughout this day on Election Day. Hey, Pennsylvania, you know what I think. Get out and vote for Dave McCormick. We need the Senate back under Mitch McConnell's leadership. We got to stop those Biden judges. That means a vote for Dave McCormick. Stay tuned. Morning, Glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Pennsylvania is voting, and they will vote until 8 p.m. tonight. I have told you many times over the last week that I endorse Dave McCormick, Pittsburgh area, and he is a very successful businessman, has served in the administration before. President Trump almost made him Secretary of Defense, and he is the guy who can win in the fall. I don't think anyone else can. He joins me now. Dave McCormick, welcome back on Election Day. How are you spending Election Day?
Hey, good morning, Hugh. How are you?
Good, good.
I'm going to go from I'm in Pittsburgh, and I'm going to go to a number of different polling sites and meet voters and shake hands and encourage them to vote and tell their friends. We're hoping for a big turnout, and it's exciting. I did 3 rallies yesterday. I did one in Harrisburg, where my mom and dad live. I did one in Bloomsburg, where I grew up, and I finished the day here in Pittsburgh. So you can see a huge excitement on the ground. Lots of focus in the last days. As you know, there's like 20% of the voters that have been undecided, and I'm optimistic about it. The voters are asking themselves the question or questions: who can represent my conservative values and fight for them? Who am I aligned with? Who can win in November? Because this is like the Super Bowl. This is going to determine whether we send Chuck Schumer home and Packen and the Republicans take the majority in the Senate. And then 3, we're in crisis as a country. So who can step into the job on day one and really be able to make a difference? So I feel like I'm getting good feedback, but we'll find out today.
Dave McCormick, Selena Zito has written that you persuade people when you show up in front of them and talk. They don't like the ad wars, but that's always a feature of a campaign. But they find out that you're the real deal when you appear. You can only be in so many places at once. How many stops have you made over the last week?
Oh, geez, I don't know, 25, 30, 35. We've done, on average, 4, 5, 6 a day, sometimes planned events. Sometimes we'll just stop by a diner. And it's been great. I mean, honestly, you don't know if you're going to like it as a candidate, campaigning that is. And I love it. And, Pennsylvanians, there's just so many inspirational stories. So I feel blessed to have been able to run and privileged, and I'm hoping I'll have the opportunity and privilege to serve the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Dave, I know you're a Steelers fan, and I have fun with them all the time. But you grew up in Bloomsburg, and I noted in the Wikipedia page you went to high school there. What kind of a high school is Bloomsburg High School? I just want people in the audience to identify the fact you are actual Keystone State born and raised, unlike some of our candidates.
Oh yeah, it's a rural high school. I was actually at the high school yesterday for a big rally. There was about 120 kids in my class, and there was probably 4 or 5 that went away for college. Lots of people went locally, but it's the kind of place where on Friday nights the whole town comes together to watch football, and on Saturday nights the gym's full for wrestling matches, and on the Monday after Thanksgiving the school's empty because everybody's deer hunting.
Now, Dave McCormick, you're a wrestler at West Point, and I know you were a wrestler in high school. Wrestling matches sometimes go down to the last throw. I think this is, but I think you've got the kick. What do you think?
Listen, I do too. I mean, I have felt such great energy on the ground. It's been so chaotic with, President Trump's endorsement and then the President Trump involvement and then, Kathy Barnett's rise at the end. And what I think people are seeing is that the stakes here are so high. They're angry about the direction of their country. They want steady, proven leadership. And I think as they step back and think about it, I'm feeling like there's a lot of support for me. And everywhere I go, I was in a Chick-fil-A yesterday, and I literally had people lining up to talk and say that they're with me. And I feel like the reason for that is those questions. Hey, who can fight for me? Who can win? And who knows what to do? Because this is no joke. Our country, if we're not careful, we're going to wake up in a couple months, couple years. We're not going to recognize the great America that we've been also privileged. I said at a rally last night, wouldn't it be a tragedy and wouldn't it be disgraceful if we're the generation that lets the great America and the exceptional America that we all love slip away? And, people feel that. People feel like something's really amiss, and they're looking for steady leadership. And listen, people ask me at rallies, hey, are you America first? And I say, I've been America first my whole life. From the time I was 18 and I volunteered to go to West Point in the 82nd Airborne Division. I love this country, and I feel like I can serve it well. And I'm asking for the support of your listeners who are voters in Pennsylvania, on their way to the polls or later today. I'm asking for their vote and their support because I'd like the opportunity to go to Washington to fight for all of us and to try to get the country back on track.
Dave McCormick, I think there are so many issues near and dear to Republican hearts. Number one is a defense useful to deter the Chinese Communist Party. And I think it's going to become the equivalent to there's a bear in the woods in 1984 to there's a dragon in the air. What ought we to do about America's defense right now?
I'm worried about our defense. Part of a strong defense is a strong economy. And our economy is in trouble because of the terrible policies of Joe Biden. The inflation, the defense budget is actually being cut because the actual increase in our budget is less than inflation. And I'm worried about the leadership of our military, frankly, both civilian and military. I think that it's been hijacked by a woke agenda that's less focused on war fighting, less focused on, and we've got a history in America of not preparing for the next war. I think the way we're spending the money looks more backwards than forwards. And we need inspired leadership that recognizes that America needs to exhibit strength around the world, and that strength is the key to preserving peace. And listen, if you want an example of why we're at risk, the Afghanistan debacle is the best example because it showed both incompetence, a lack of strategic vision, a lack of accountability. But, the first thing you learn at West Point is that leaders take accountability. You see none of that from Joe Biden in terms of Afghanistan or our terrible economy or the energy crisis or Ukraine. And we need accountable leadership. We need strong leadership. We need leadership focused on American exceptionalism. And we don't have it right now.
Dave McCormick, yesterday I played a bunch of clips of Javier Becerra and other Biden administration officials saying it's not our fault that the plant in Michigan is closed. Yes, it is. They entered into a consent decree yesterday. Abbott said our product is safe. It's been safe for months. We were never connected with these infant illnesses. And just yesterday, it's political. The administrative state is political. So I think a lot of moms, and especially new moms, are going to vote today and wonder who's going to actually stop the state from interfering with the production of baby formula and everything else that they get wrong.
Yeah, it really is the difference. And that's in many ways what this election is about, and particularly the general election. It's about, do you believe that the core of America's future is individual freedom and individual responsibility and liberty? Or do you believe the government needs to play an increasingly greater role in determining how we respond to things like COVID, in determining how we engineer our economy, and with CEOs playing some role in terms of driving society's political agenda? This is what the debate's about. And in the general election, my opponent would be John Fetterman, who's an avowed socialist. So we're in a fight for the future of America. And the future of America comes down to ideas. Do we believe in free market capitalism? Do we believe in American exceptionalism? Do we believe in free enterprise? Do we believe in liberty? Or do we believe in a socially engineered, woke leadership that's taking our country over a cliff? And, listen, that's the argument I want to make in the general election. Our ideas are better. Our ideas are better to alleviate poverty. Our ideas are better for religious freedom and liberty. And our ideas are critical to Americans achieving the American dream, our kids achieving the American dream. And Hugh, that's, if you were going to say in one sentence what I'm running for, why I'm running, it's to make sure that my kids and our kids and the kids of Pennsylvania can have the same American dream I've had. I've been blessed. Listen, I've had all this great country has to offer. I just want to make sure it's there for the next guys.
Well, from Pittsburgh to Philadelphia, from Erie to Scranton, and down to the southeast corner, Dave McCormick can win. I just got my first request to moderate a debate between the Republican nominee and the Democratic nominee in the fall, and of course I said yes. But in my heart, I know Fetterman is going to roll over your two opponents. He's formidable. You're not afraid to debate him. I'll bet you demand as many debates as he'll give you. Am I right about that?
You're right about it. And listen, people say, boy, what do you think about all this criticism and all this stuff? I say, I've been rough and tumble my whole life. I've been in lots of fights. And, Ranger School and the 82nd Airborne and all these things. This is a fight. And we need resilient candidates who can answer all the tough questions and can fight for ideas and have the experience and the leadership to prevail. And that's why I think I'm the best candidate to win the general election. And I'm the best candidate also to bring those conservative Democrats that we need. There's a lot of Democrats in Pennsylvania who look at the direction of the country and say, I want nothing to do with that. It's the Reagan line about, I didn't leave the Democratic Party, it left me. We can bring a lot of those conservative Democrats over in the fall.
On Election Day, Dave, I know you will run through the tape. Polls are up until 8 p.m. I'll replay this interview next hour. Good luck, Dave McCormick. I know you're on the road. I think it could be a close election. I hope every Hugh Hewitt Show listener gets out and votes for Dave McCormick. I'll be right back, America. Stay tuned. More on the Pennsylvania Senate race when I come back on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America. I want you to remember this title, Only the Strong, Reversing the Left's Plot to Sabotage American Power. Only the Strong has a great author by the name of Senator Tom Cotton, who joins me now. Congratulations, Senator Cotton. I love the cover.
Hey, Hugh, thanks very much for having me on, and thanks for the kind words about Only the Strong. We just announced my new book yesterday. It'll be out this fall, and it's available for pre-order on book sites near you, and it'll be available at bookstores all around the country this November if you want to pick up a copy of Only the Strong. And as you said, the subtitle is about how we reverse the left's plot to sabotage American power, Hugh. I conceived this book shortly after the collapse of Afghanistan last August. So many Arkansans asked me, well, what happened? How could it have come to this? And it's really very much of a piece with Democratic debacles going back decades, whether it's the Bay of Pigs under Kennedy, Vietnam under Kennedy and Johnson, Mogadishu under Clinton. These are not accidents. These are not mishaps. Democrats aren't naive or inept, or they aren't only naive and inept. Democrats have a concerted plan to undermine and sabotage American power and to weaken America in the world. And it goes back as far as Woodrow Wilson and the Progressive Era. As you and Larry Arnn discuss frequently on Fridays, that he was the first American president to openly and explicitly repudiate the American founding, the Declaration of Independence, and the Constitution, and the moral basis of those documents, which of course undermines American power. You saw that in World War I when Woodrow Wilson refused to go to war, for instance, after the sinking of the Lusitania, or whenever Germany promised Mexico to help them regain our territory if they would fight against us. Rather, he went to war on behalf of abstractions, ideals, disconnected from American interests. And of course, over the years, that became what Gene Kirkpatrick famously called the Blame America First Democrats during Vietnam and since then, that always blame America for the world's problems, really reaching its pinnacle with Barack Obama, probably the most ideological man to become president since Woodrow Wilson, maybe ever. And his ideology was one that always blamed America and tried to constrain America and tried to role in the world. So I think your readers or your listeners will really enjoy Only the Strong.
I think the metastatic ideology of the left deserves close scrutiny. I've done a lot of book watching in my 30 years on air, Senator Cotton. I have never seen a pre publication book go to number one in national and international security books. Yours was announced yesterday. It's now number one in that category. It's already at 2,856 overall. I am that's just incredible, actually. 12 Books is really the best publisher in America. I really do think that 12 Books is the best imprint in America. So you've picked the best imprint, and it will come out. We'll talk about it in depth and detail. I talked to Dave McCormick earlier this morning, who, like you, is an airborne veteran, the 82nd, not the 101st, as you were in, and you corrected me last week. And I asked him about the Chinese Communist Party. As a Chinese Communist Party fanatic who killed those people in my old home of Orange County over the weekend, or killed one and seriously injured four, I doubt he's acting on the orders of the CCP. But that fanaticism is there, and it's virulent.
Yeah, Hugh, the Chinese communists have a well-designed plot to try to replace America as the world superpower, and they use all the elements and instruments of national power to do so, not just militarily, but economically and financially, which has also had a devastating effect on America's prosperity. A lot of this goes back, as I explained, only the strong to Bill Clinton, who made the terrible mistake, unfortunately, with some Republican support, of admitting China to the World Trade Organization after having granted them permanent most favored nation status. China's rise goes back to Deng Xiaoping's economic reforms starting in the late 70s and the 80s. But when Bill Clinton took office, China was still a relatively backwards economy. By the time he left office, our trade with China had increased several multiples. But then on his way out of office, literally in his last 3 months of office, by giving China most favored nation status and admitting them to the WTO, he supercharged what became known as the China shock. And states like yours in Ohio, states like mine lost a quarter of their manufacturing jobs. All the while, we powered China's economic rise, which then in turn fueled their military and intelligence services to compete against the United States. It was a terrible, terrible mistake.
And the recklessness has continued on both sides of the aisle that I think it's now over, and I hope Only the Strong, your book, helps arrest that lack of awareness of the threat from China. I don't think they sent the killer to the Orange County Church. I just think that the virulence of their ideology as it is portrayed in their national state organs is going to have not a proximate cause, but some impact on the unstable in America who are fans of the CCP. I want to play for you, Senator Cotton, Elon Musk yesterday on the All In podcast and get your reaction. He sounds a little bit like Senator Cotton did when I talked to Senator Cotton a couple of weeks back after Joe Biden made one of his astonishing flubs. Here's Elon Musk yesterday.
Man, it's hard to tell what Biden's doing, to be totally frank. Like, I feel like
it's weekend at Bernie's.
The real president is whoever controls the teleprompter. It's like the path to power is the path to the teleprompter. Because then he just reads the teleprompter. So I do feel like if somebody would accidentally lean on the teleprompter, it's going to be like Anchorman. It's going to be like QQQ ASDF 123 type of thing.
I mean,
Senator Cotton, I don't think he's wrong.
Well, it's a very well-placed Anchorman reference.
Yes.
I think that there's a lot of progressive ideologues around Joe Biden, the same people who made up Obama's administration, the most ideological administration in recent memory. But Joe Biden often gets in his worst trouble when he goes off his teleprompter. You mentioned what we discussed here a few weeks ago after his Warsaw speech. The Warsaw speech itself was kind of a classic of Wilsonian rhetoric, speaking purely in abstractions about abstract ideals, not concrete American interests and allies. So that was bad enough. But of course, it was his ad lib at the end saying that Vladimir Putin had to leave power. Ronald Reagan was very tough on the Soviet Union. He confronted them around the world on their expansionist efforts. Yet he never called for the ouster of Brezhnev or Andropov or Gorbachev. It was an extremely, extremely ill-advised statement by Joe Biden, and that's why I said at the time, and I still believe that we'd all be better off if he would just stop speaking extemporaneously. No more ad libs from prepared speeches, and no more press conferences or interviews, because I think it's risky for the United States and risky for world security and peace.
You know, the trouble is that he doesn't have any surrogates. He sent Javier Becerra, the HHS secretary, out yesterday. And at the end of 3 or 4 appearances, I am completely convinced that the consent decree that the FDA signed with the maker of baby formula up in Michigan is a complete sham. It's an effort to cover up the FDA's incompetence. Have you looked into that yet, Senator?
Yeah, this baby formula crisis is almost entirely a manufactured crisis because of the bureaucrats in the Biden administration. I mean, just think about what happened in the Trump administration. We produced a vaccine working with industry in record time, something that the Tony Fauci's of the world said was not possible in less than a year. If Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden had been in charge in 2020, we probably still wouldn't have a vaccine. Just like moms and dads can't find formula for their kids. Again, this is a manufactured crisis by a dumb bureaucracy, and the FDA really needs to get itself in gear.
You know, yesterday the Alliance Defending Freedom won a lawsuit on behalf of the Christian Employers Alliance versus the Equal Employment Opportunity Committee on gender identity mandates at healthcare centers. Only the strong stand up to the left-wing bureaucracy, Tom Cotton, and woke capitalism. Is there a place in the Only the Strong book? I haven't got a pre-publication copy. I have no idea yet. I hope I'll get one so I can read it as soon as it's available. But it just seems to me that everybody's got to stand up and say no everywhere. And only the strong actually do stand up to Disney, to the Major League Baseball, to Delta, to Coke, to the EEOC. You've got to be strong to say, this is absurd. This is not freedom. We're going to stop it.
Yeah, and Hugh, I talk about in Only the Strong how this goes back to the progressive era and Wilson's vision for this vast administrative state unencumbered by the messiness of elections and democratic accountability, and how they believe in big government. They don't believe in the Constitution. I also talk to them about how corporations have been co-opted to the left-wing agenda in America. And you're right, it takes someone who is strong to stand up to the bureaucracy and stand up to these corporations and tell them to either get in gear when it's the FDA causing a baby formula shortage, or don't stick their nose where it doesn't belong when it's companies like Disney or Coca-Cola weighing in on things far beyond their their production operations as a business.
Last question, Senator Cotton. You're a Harvard undergrad, Harvard Law, so you didn't have the benefit of a Michigan Law School education, but that's pretty good. However, no matter how much we love our alma maters, I think the future of the country is at places like Hillsdale that actually teach the Constitution, that the future is the past, that the apple of gold in the frame of silver, as Lincoln said, is what we've got to focus on. Does Only the Strong focus on the first principles of constitutionalism, limited government, and the value and virtue of freedom?
Yeah, I do, Hugh, in Only the Strong, Chapter 1. It's called The Progressive Roots of Decline. All of these, every trend you see in America today on the left was seeded in the progressive era with Woodrow Wilson and the explicit rejection of the principles of the founding. The rejection, for instance, of a timeless, unchanging human nature as the foundation of our political systems, going in favor of kind of historical determinism imported from German idealist philosophers. The rejection of limited constitutional government in favor of the vast administrative state that we see in Washington today. So in that first chapter of Only the Strong, I kind of explore the philosophical battle between the founders on the one hand and the progressive left on the other hand.
I look forward to reading it. I also want to warn you, Senator, since you're a runner, stay away from the Virginia runner's path along the Potomac. Very dangerous place for people.
I heard you almost got taken out.
Well, you know, you got to be careful when you're 66. When you're young and nimble like you are, Senator, it's great. I look forward to Only the Strong. Thank you, Senator Cotton. I put up a link already. Go and pre-order because you're not going to be able to get it in America. 12 Books is the best publisher in America, and they will put it everywhere. But you want to pre-order it so you get it on the first day. Only the Strong by Senator Tom Cotton.